Hi, Michael.
Hi, Merrylin. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty well. What's on your mind astrologically these days?
I've been kind of sitting with this experience lately of people coming to see me who have had their charts reflected back to them in ways that make them feel like either their chart's bad or they're bad or um, that there's just like there's something insurmountable about it. And I just see when I explain to people like the benefits and the expression and experiences with, challenging aspects, we call them, of course, right? Which are conjunctions, squares, oppositions, and inconjuncts. Um, that these are the opportunities for us to grow. And, I think sometimes people setting up a relationship with those experiences that makes people shy away from them is not that great.
Well, that's interesting because I figured when you mentioned that some people have actually been told that they have a bad chart, that I figured they were talking about hard aspects. And maybe we could just jump to the personal at this point. You and I both have bad. I've never thought of them that way. Aspects. So, the squares, the oppositions, you might even put the quincunxes in there, etc. And I know one time you said to me, Michael, that an astrologer said to you, "Oh, well, you have such an easy life." And what they saw was your grand trine. And actually, it forms with some sextiles, which usually are referred to as easy aspects as versus hard aspects. Why some people even use the term bad, I don't know. I mean, because basically, what this really means is that certain things, certain activities that the planets reflect come just like second nature to people. It doesn't mean that they're using that energy in the most advantageous way. They they might even be using it in a negative way, in a way that's disadvantaging. So, we see that with trines sometimes, and even sextiles, where the opportunities to do something fabulous is actually being missed. Um, Whereas the more difficult aspects, you don't have, it's not easy to use them, period. And you can succumb easily to the downside. For example, I have Mercury square Saturn. It's the most exact aspect in my chart, which even makes it stronger. Mercury, the ability to communicate. Saturn, the structure of communication. I don't speak as fluently as you do. And part of it is that energy.
Mm.
And this is more in my younger years. I would be reluctant to speak at all and even be more personal. Mercury not only represents one's communication, it also represents one's siblings.
Mm.
And Saturn also represents one's authority figures, like one's parent, especially in my generation, the father. Although my father wasn't in the household after I was 6 years old, so so I can't say that he was the overriding authority figure in my life. Um, so anyway, so there's a sibling having difficulty with a parent, and in this example of communication and the structure of communication as being difficult versus easy, the sibling I'm referring to is my sister. I have two brothers, but it was my sister who always fought verbally with my father. And I can remember him saying to her one point, please stop talking. You say too much, you know. And I, hearing that as her 5 year younger year sister, said, I'm never going to be like that. I did this with my brothers and a different example, but I'm never going to be like that. I mean, so I internalized my thoughts. And it was one of the ways in which I recognized how, I was a, a top student through my schooling. It wasn't like it impaired my education in any way, but I would always be reluctant to speak. And I would speak when there was a certain energetic that would take hold of me. And I would think, I have to say this. I have to say this. And so I would say it. And, after years of therapy, I mean, you can tell with my gray hair that I'm, got a few years on you, but you have some gray hair too. Anyway, after years of therapy and stuff, um, I, I overcame that, but I still speak in a hesitant manner. And it's that kind of reflection that Saturn brings up, like, wait a minute, is this really the right thing to say? That makes, and so there's the difficulty. I might also say there were other things, like my sister used to say, stop singing when I was a kid because you sound awful. Well, after years of therapy and being with some friends at a 50-year-old slumber party, I started singing to some tunes, some oldies but goodies we were listening to. And one of them, recalling, said, you can sing. I remember how painful it was for you in school. and so, I point that out as those squares aren't bad aspects. They're difficult ones. But when we work with them, actually, you can produce things that might be more successful or more, I don't want to use the word perfect, but appropriate for a situation, because there's it's part of the fourth harmonic of manifestation. And so you can manifest things that are longed for, that are ideal in some ways. Whereas with the what we call the easy aspects, the sextiles or trines and stuff, you may produce things, but they may be mediocre. I'm not saying this is the case for everybody. Right. They may be mediocre. They just be that's like, I can remember a case where somebody who showed me his art, and I thought, oh my God, here I thought this person was an experienced artist, and it wasn't the case at all. It was like, okay, yes, this is, you could call this art, but it's very common. You have to say something about this, Michael.
Well, yeah, it's very interesting, because what I find is that, the truth is that the fourth harmonic, so it's basically, just to explain to people, the fourth harmonic is taking the 360-degree wheel, which is the entire zodiacal wheel, and dividing it by 4, which shows you right away where you have oppositions, conjunctions, and squares, which is the reason why most people are going to be, what the issues that most people are about. The difference about those sorts of aspects or relationships between the planets versus the trines and the sextiles is that you can't ignore them. They're, the square is going to be basically like a pie hitting you in the face, or you're driving along the road minding your own business, and all of a sudden someone comes along and T-bones you. That to me is like a square or a T-square. An opposition is someone just basically, when you're sitting across from someone, you can't ignore them. There's no way to ignore it. It's a full moon. It's a full presentation of whatever it is that's there. And a conjunction is something that can be great or hindering. I mean, there are amazing stories about Siamese twins who have this amazing ability to sometimes have an incredible level of individuality, but also this commonality. But The difference between, again, between these two types of aspects, we call them challenging or supportive, is that the supportive ones, like you said, is almost like you can ignore them. So there's a way that the opportunities can pass you by, whereas with the fourth harmonics, these challenging aspects are ones that kind of require your attention. But I think actually if you use any of the aspects, if you bring attention and consciousness to any of the aspects, what they can give you is really phenomenal and really long-standing. I personally, along with my sun and moon, you know, like you and I both have Aquarius suns and Scorpio moons, which are technically squaring energies. You know, we're both third quarter square, you know, lunar energies. So there's this ongoing tension. We're not in those places. We're not very flexible. Fortunately, there are other parts in our chart that help bring out other things that show us. A harder aspect for me is I have a Saturn moon square, but I have them in the water signs. So kind of like what I've learned over the years is like that Saturn moon square is like going around looking at life through this little periscope and saying, oh my God, there's not enough, there's not enough. Because literally from the moment I was born, there was not enough. I was not going to get the nurturing I needed from the physical world, and I didn't. But somehow, miraculously, I survived. You know, thank God for that. I'm actually missing just 1 point to have a grand sextile in my chart, so it's, you know, it's a pretty incredible spot of being able to have that. So I think there's something that, you know, the two of them working together. It's like going from that Saturn square of going like that, and then opening up both eyes and opening like, oh my God, there's so much more, which is also so Aquarian and so Scorpionic, right? We can get so caught up in like the most minute, I'm going to say asinine details, you know, because it can get so like it can get so mental and so fixed in its way, and something has to break through it and like make us see that there's so much more. We have to step out of it. We have to continually surrender. Those of us with Scorpio moons, anyone with Scorpionic planets knows it's, you know, we're here to have a constant death and rebirth in that area of our life with those needs of those planets being expressed.
Exactly. You know, another factor too, when you hear this term, I know I have heard this from some clients, like, oh my God, you have a chart like this mass killer. You know, I mean, what's his name? Daimler or Manson, one of these people. And the truth is, there are many people who have a chart that's similar to another, because many people are born in the same city on the same day within the same minutes, maybe in a different hospital, maybe, you know, in a different place. But it's, you know, it's not like only one person is born on one day. The aspects may involve different houses because of the movement of the planets during the day. But you know, the truth is that, and so what it boils down to, and I think this is really important for people to understand about astrology, is it tells us about, you know, the processes that people go through, and the ease or the facility or the conflicts that may come up or whatever. But it doesn't tell us about the level of consciousness that they came into this planet with. And this takes you into a whole metaphysical world. And there's a doctor, a neurosurgeon that somebody told me about recently. His last name's Alexander, who went into a coma for 8 days or 7 days a week, something like that, and had this phenomenal experience that when he came back and started, you know, telling people what he was experiencing, as a neurosurgeon, he had always thought that consciousness was directly related to our brains, you know, and then there was the mind, but where's the mind? And there, you know, different psychologists move around with that locality as well. And there was always the assumption that when one dies, or when he had this massive coma, that none of the authorities thought he would recover from. There was a 2% possibility that he would recover, that his consciousness would be dead. and it wasn't. And so, you know, and I don't know, I mean, he's written several books, and I'm in the process of reading one of them that has to do with consciousness, because that's the area that I'm very much aware with when I deal with the moon cycles. And you know, it appears, I don't think anybody has absolute proof, but we have our own certainties and core beliefs that grab us and hold us through our lives, is that consciousness precedes and follows this physical existence we have here. And that element, the chart does not tell us. We only get to know that through interaction with a client. And this is where, you know, many astrologers will encourage their clients to tell them about certain experiences, because in that conversation are clues about where this person is operating, you know. Otherwise, we have to make assumptions, and, you know, you could say, oh, this person, I don't know, well, I'm used to a thing as an artist, you know, as a master artist, a Picasso, a Dali, you know, a Rembrandt, somebody who's just out there and everybody knows Van Gogh and whatnot. You could assume, oh, here's another one. But until you see that person's work, or that person tells you something about their work that's descriptive, can you actually then narrow in on, oh, where are they in this being an artist process? And it's a process. They may become that great artist. They may already be there, or they may be on the journey and they're partway there.
Yeah, and it's been fun, you know, like in doing the astrological mavericks, it was very interesting to see, you know, time and time again, this the ways in which the planets. It's funny, like, you know, you say that. I think the individual, regardless of their consciousness, is going to have similar types of experiences, but clearly is not going to have the means to process it in the same way. And so then I think the real key that comes in is like, what's going on for the environment of that person. And one of my favorite examples is, and they're both kind of very interesting dictators in their own way, but one is Hitler, and the second one is Sigmund Freud. They both have Sun conjunct their descendant in Taurus. You know, like kind of like that my way or the highway kind of attitude. And, you know, and they rallied an amazing number of people who followed their dogma, you know, their pragmatic, you know, I like to say almost like, you know, the way, you know, both of us are ex-Catholics, you know, the papal bull, you know, whenever I think there's a level of Taurus that is actually like, there's a decree in Taurus of like, you know, in addition to stubbornness, there's steadfastness. You know, like when it's determined about something, when it knows that's what it is, it will hold itself to such that, you know, to such a degree.
Yes, and those and Freud and Hitler are good examples, because they definitely did have, you know, my way or the highway about what they were about. Just, you know, one way more destructive than the other.
But in a way,
but
Freud also was, I mean, in the sense of like, I mean, in some ways, great, amazing advancements, no question whatsoever. But in other ways, the continued denigration of the feminine, you know, and in terms of like things like hysterical or things like, you know, places where like, I mean, there's really no room for the emotional self in the Victorian / Edwardian world, right? It was just like, you know, everything coming out of England was this, you know, and the puritanical Americas was just like this crazy rigidity. So of course, you know, people were swooning. They were like tied up in these tight bodices, in these dresses. They couldn't breathe. They're having these experiences, you know, some of them living in the South wearing all that, those outfits is 120 degrees and it's, you know, 200% humidity. You know, of course they're swooning and passing out, you know, because, you know, the husband's off having affairs. But meanwhile, the woman's wrong, you know.
she's being strangled.
Right.
It's kind
right.
of funny.
Yeah.
It is.
But
Well, you know,
but,
I'm thinking thinking also of Donald Trump. He has a Mercury square Neptune, last quarter Mercury square Neptune. And a lot of people, I know other people who've had that configuration. It's not an easy one because one's rationality is having to take on a consciousness that marries itself with what some people would call irrationality, or the just, you know, communication or thinking ability that has absolutely no boundaries.
Or no
And with
connection with
him,
reality.
yeah, exactly. And that's what we see, I think, my
Well,
perspective of Donald Trump.
right, and
Whereas
then
I know other people that have been very successful in careers where they've had to learn very finite skills, you know, and do them well to be successful and do them without harm. Although there's one situation that I'm thinking of, there were some side effects of harm, but nothing to the degree that Donald Trump has achieved so far.
well, I
in
mean,
terms of harmfulness to other people.
but the hard part
Go
is,
ahead.
is that, you know, usually life has a certain numbers of checks and balances in them. And for most of us, you know, we can go over and have a little pie in the sky kind of you know, idealism, which, you know, of course that aspect can have, you know, especially if you put, you know, if they're like in the signs of Sagittarius and Pisces, say, you know, I mean, you aren't really going to get that person or tell that person really anything. They've got to go off and find that out for themselves. But with Trump and with a lot of these politicians, they're surrounded by yes people. And like he's shown like the amazing flaws in the US system of how we don't really have checks and balances because he's so surrounded by people telling him, and you know, it's like energetically fluffing him. Like he's being like, you know, all of his fire is being constantly fluffed with air. So he's a hot air balloon. So as long as he continues to have that opportunity, because I think in a certain level he's playing a role for the collective in a very unconscious manner, of course. He's showing us a lot of things that are wrong, things
Well,
that need
and
to be done. Go ahead.
yeah, that perhaps a president has too much power when he can select people for major roles in the governments who have no qualifications for them,
And then
you know,
summarily
no
fire
skills
them,
whatsoever.
and then summarily fire them or dismiss them, and then excuse them for wrongdoing. I mean, the miscarriages of justice are so sickening. I mean, those of us who are paying attention, and we're all speechless in a way. I mean, because it's like you can't. I mean, again, this is like a Mercury Neptune thing we're talking about, right? You can't even really name it because there's no coherency to it. It's just like you're chasing the smoke of a dragon. It's elusive.
Yeah, you know, that that Mercury Neptune raises interesting questions about the human mind and what we're capable of, and what is appropriate or best, and what isn't. And this goes to, it brings up, you know, Neptune's partner Jupiter, you know, because you could see before we discovered Neptune, you could maybe see some of the characteristics in a Mercury square Jupiter show up without understanding. But in that realm of Jupiter, and you could also say it comes out of the realm of Neptune to some extent, are these universal principles, you know, of cause and effect, of what goes around comes around. And it takes a certain level of consciousness to see that. And so, you know, one wonders about the people in government that you've just been describing, and their level of consciousness. I mean, they may realize the lies, but do they realize the effects of what they're doing? The fact that, you know, this pandemic we're in is at the state it's in. You know, when we first became aware of it in the United States, Italy was completely shut down. And now, I mean, I don't know the figures, but, you know, they're on their way to a recovery. They're opening up way more than we are, et cetera. And just looking at a few examples like that, you have to say these are the consequences of of a mind that doesn't have any restriction in terms of right or wrong or best or not, except for oneself. I mean, there's a real disorder here, real disorder.
Well,
There's
and
the
also,
chaos. It's the worst side of Neptune. Worst side of Neptune. It's
so
chaos and
yeah,
disorder.
I mean, here's Neptune and Pisces, but also the other thing is that we've also got to see that we've also got two political parties who are now receiving amazing sums of money and are becoming so disconnected from the American public that, to be honest, it's criminal. I mean, it's insider trading. It's I mean, you know, each time, you know, you hear these stories, like each time, you know, they're in these, you know, these Senate and congressional hearings, you know, during the recesses, they're calling their stockbrokers, moving stocks around based on whatever it is they're talking about there, because they're making deals with all these corporate heads. And it's like, you know, what we're creating is this crazy class of people who are not in touch with the vast majority of what's going on. You know, the idea that you can just randomly send federal troops into a place without being invited by the mayor or the governor is horrific as far as I'm concerned. I mean, if that isn't a power play, I mean, the power grab, I've talked about this with the Jupiter Pluto, you know, these are power grabs. And I said, you know, I've been saying all along that Trump is going to find some way to delay the election. So now, you know, the sad part is that he can't keep his mouth shut. If he kept his mouth shut for a little while, he could spring it on everyone at the last minute. But I mean, he's been saying enough that people are, you know, hopefully listening to him and are going to be prepared that he's probably going to call some sort of state emergency or something, because he's not going to relinquish.
Well, talk about tomfoolery in the case of Portland that you were referring to just a minute ago. Um, you know, it's under the pretense of protecting federal buildings. Yeah, and like you wonder who's damaging the federal buildings. Is it the protesters who've been protesting peacefully up until some of these confrontations? Or are they planted people or whatever? And then back to your issue about the money in politics, which really has to go. I mean, you know, I'm a registered Democrat, and I am frustrated with the amount of emails that I get, one of which I responded recently because Ben Ray Lujan, who is running for the Senate, you know, is afraid that his rival, and I guess that's Ron Ketty, the weatherman from the CBS local channel, and and not Fox. It's 13. Anyway, that and there's some polls that he's referring to. I finally responded, not that I'll get an answer, I haven't so far, to one of these saying, what polls are you referring to? I just cannot imagine, you know, I mean, the hyperbole is just over the top. And I'll still vote, you know, and all things staying as they are, I will still vote for Ben Ray Lujan. But I'm really upset with this money raising stuff, and the fact that these Congress people spend half of their time when they're in office raising money across the street from their offices, and that has to go. That has to. If it means, you know, more taxes in a sane, not an insane society, since we're talking a little bit about Neptune, we have to, I think, see that it's worth paying more taxes to have people well taken care of and jobs being done in a well and timely fashion. which doesn't always happen in Washington.
Yeah, it's really it's kind of interesting to see and to hear, how people are looking at all of this and how they're treating it. And I'm intrigued. I mean, now, this is August 1st. There is nothing in place. Our senators and our Congress people are, getting their pay without any trouble. But, millions of Americans across the United States right now are not, are technically not getting anything. Seeing how quickly, or actually not how quickly, but how ill prepared the states were in handling their unemployment claims and administrating the federal funds that came through, as well as federal guidelines on how the states need to go about getting those funds, has been really ridiculous. But for some reason, our politicians who are making far more money from their deals and the money that they're getting from their what's that darn thing called, Citizens United, now that corporations are individuals, they don't really care. And I have to say, I've been unsubscribing left and right to the Democrat. I'm a registered Democrat as well. And I can't really, when I get into talks with any of my Republican friends, I can't really argue with them that much, because I believe that there's all this corruption with the Democrats as well. And I'm tired of receiving these emails every single time. Oh, we need this to do this, we need this to do that. It's like, you know what? Just do your damn job. I'm a CFO for a homeless shelter. I don't spend, half of my time going out there and, saying, hey, you need to give me $5 because we want to help this person. Oh, I need you to give me another. It's like, you know what? We need to do our jobs. That's what we're there to do. Have some other means that's getting those funds coming in. This fear, it's this constant fear that, if we don't do this, and, all of a sudden the tide's going to change. No, the truth is we have two parties that are really acting. They're all self-interests. Sorry.
And how about they're working at a new system? How about they're changing the laws? They must be benefiting, because for years we've been saying they're the ones that can change this system. They're the ones that can say, let's set aside X amount of taxpayer money for everybody who meets these qualifications to have this much time on the media,
right.
Just equalize that playing field. And let's shorten the amount of time. Let's do what some countries do. Let's do this in 3 months, not 2, and next year will probably, or the next election will probably be, if we on this course, 3 years of campaigning. That's ridiculous. It's all ridiculous.
And someone's getting right. And well, like
this is our Sagittarius rising, like you, Michael, going overboard. No, you don't go overboard.
I try not to, but I mean, it's like Trump. I mean, when you see that, he's operating, his focus isn't on doing his job as being the president. His focus is on being reelected and not losing. There's this, that's one thing, like this fear of losing, someone's going to lose. I mean, that's what happens when you have these systems set up, when you have these voting systems. But, like what I've been saying for years is it's time for us to, have a Labor Party, a minority party, have 5, 6, 7, 8 parties that actually represent the rainbow that is the United States. We're a freaking melting pot. Let's start reflecting. Congress is starting to show that up. The Senate's, still pretty darn white. That's got to change, but little by little, as each of the states become more and more integrated with the beautiful rainbow that is our country, we're going to have to see our elected officials changing in that way. And hopefully those elected officials will not fall into the path that the old white guys have fallen into.
Well, it goes back to the founding fathers. We haven't broken the cycle of the country's mythology. And just like in families, you have to heal, there's a healing modality. We talked about healing last week. There's a healing modality that's related to neurolinguistic programming called family constellations, developed by a German, Hellinger, I believe his name, who was a psychologist of sorts. I don't remember his exact title, but who also studied neurolinguistic programming and came up with this way of healing certain patterns that one sees generation after generation within a family, and how they continue. And it's quite a profound process to go through. And the country needs to go through something like that, where we, we get all of our medicine people together and do some kind of a healing ritual. And when I say medicine people, I'm including healers of all sorts, not just the allopathic medical people. Yeah.
Well, what this
So
comes back
calling
to,
all healers.
calling all healers. But
Yeah.
I mean, one of the, and it comes back to this idea, that we started off the talk with today, as far as like, bad aspects and things. Another part is, when people have these, these strong planetary placements or strong charts, the truth is that there are many strong individuals on the planet right now, and we need to empower one another, because the truth is our leadership isn't right now, right? And so the voice needs to come back to the people. The people need to, we all need to start making our voice be heard. We need to be saying, hey, you know what, this isn't okay. We don't want to support the way you guys are going. Business as usual is no longer going to work. And so what's wonderful about astrology is astrology isn't the horoscope you read in the newspaper. It isn't your sun sign or just your ascendant. Astrology teaches us that there are many different voices in each of us, and therefore there are many different voices that are also in the collective needs. If we can start addressing and learning how to integrate that vast rainbow of expression that all of us have in a way that's healthy and supportive, that works. I mean, that's what I think all these changes are about. We have to pull our heads out of our butt. We have to get out of, understanding, we're not going to have the luxury of having 35 different types of toothpaste to pick from anymore. We're going to go back to, things need to get a little bit more simple. There's anxiety in all those choices. Who needs 35 different types of toothpaste?
When baking soda will do.
Right. Or just talking mean. But did you want to say anything more? I mean, I don't know. Like for me, like I feel as an astrologer, like I keep saying to myself, I realize, and I say to other people, is that our role as astrologers are to be theme finders and cheerleaders. We're here to reflect back that complexity that is an individual, so that we can express all the parts that we're here to be, and not just like these little itty bitty parts. We come out of the 1950s, everything was so black and white. Everything was just so rigid. I mean, everything, like, everyone had to fit into this square. And what we're learning more and more is that not only do we not all fit into a square, but that there's beauty in each of the different ways, of all the different shapes, all the different sizes, and that none of them are wrong. I mean, except for when you're not, obviously when you're going around harming people, that's, not a good thing. But, hopefully through having the right kind of reflection back to people, which is what astrology can give, saying, hey, you know what, you've got some interesting ways in your chart. You've got to learn how to balance your energies. That's gonna take you a little while to learn how to work that, rather than, oh, you're being a bad boy. You're saying, like, people who have, like, I mean, hello, I've got Uranus trine Mercury, so with Pluto, stuff comes out of my mouth that people don't really want to hear, right? The Scorpio moon, so that's a shaming thing. What I got as a kid was that really shaming, but the truth is that is a gift that I have to do. I have to be around people who can appreciate and want to hear, oh, I want to be a better person, reflect back to me the ways in which you see how I can improve that. And then that's one of the gifts of my energetic placement of planets works. And I think as each of us find whatever that magical combination of using our planets in a way to help others and help ourselves, I think we can all live a much happier, more beautiful life here on the planet with one another.
I'm thinking about nonviolent communication, Michael. Is that something you work towards?
Yeah.
No, not that you.
It's like finding.
You don't let that Uranus Pluto destroy things, really. I don't even think I've never seen that in you. Actually.
I've had it. I mean, growing up.
Yeah, I think we're winding
down. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Any closing statements you want to make?
Just check us out. There'll be more on our YouTube channel. keep listening, keep following, subscribe to us. And also listen to me on Moonwise at ksfr.org. Saturdays at 10:30 Mountain Time, and you can stream it at ksfr.org.
Great. You can reach me
Bye
at
for now, Michael.
Hi, and you can reach me at coremichael.com, and that's where you can get a lot of different information. And hope everyone has a wonderful week. Thanks, Merrylin. It's always a treat talking with you. Have a great day.
All right. You too.
Thanks. Bye.